On Friday, few hours before SmackDown, WWE announced 3 talent releases. Baron Corbin, Indi Hartwell, who wrestled on SmackDown later that night, and Tegan Nox. They are all gone, and all of them will become free agents in 90 days. None of these 3 are that surprising at all. Maybe Indi a little bit, just because she's had a little more FaceTime on TV than the other 2, but even with Indi, I mean, they weren't doing anything with her. Corbin, we'll start with him. He posted on social media, "That's all she wrote, folks. It's been real, and I appreciate everyone who supported me." Corbin's been real friendly on Twitter over the years with MJF. I'm just saying. I'm not advocating anything. I'm just saying those 2 working together in some way, 2 douchebags on TV, since they play them so well. I mean, that could be interesting. But look, Corbin had been with the company since 2012. And in that time, he did well in NXT. He was never the NXT champion or anything, but he had a decent run down there as the lone wolf, right? With the skullet. Once he got called up in 2016, he was like a modern day Brutus Beefcake. He went through gimmick after gimmick after gimmick. The Lone Wolf, King Corbin, Constable Corbin, Bum-Ass Corbin, Happy Corbin. Happy Corbin, but with JBL in his corner. I mean, they handed this man so much shit. I don't think that anybody could have made it work. The King Corbin stuff was terrible, and it went on for way too long. Then they made him Constable of the Raw brand, which is when we got the infamous segment on Raw with all the McMahons basically apologizing to us for how terrible a television show Raw was at that time. That's how you know the show was bad, when they turned it into an angle on TV about how fucking terrible the show was. Truly the dark days of Raw. But in storyline, they tried to assign blame for how bad the show was to Baron Corbin. They made him the scapegoat to try to deflect the heat away from themselves. Broke-ass Corbin. That was the best Baron Corbin we ever got outside of the initial Lone Wolf stuff. That was the most entertaining he's ever been. But then his luck turned around and he got rich, and so he was Happy Corbin. And then they paired him with, they had the pairing with him and who was his sidekick? It truly is out of sight, out of mind. Madcap Moss, there you go. Madcap Moss, they added him to the act. Yeah, that turned out real great. Then they paired him up with JBL, which will go down as one of the worst pairings in WWE history. Right? I mean, it is right there next to Alberto Del Rio and Zeb Coulter. Okay, the Del Rio and the Zeb pairing made absolutely no sense, which is why Vince did it, because he's a weirdo. So that was a Vince McMahon idea, and it didn't work. The Corbin and the JBL pairing, that was a Triple H idea. Just to show all of you that Triple H doesn't always cook the way that people say he does. I have to go online every fucking week. And there's always somebody, "Oh boy, Triple H is cooking." Right? Let him cook. Isn't that what they say? Yeah, well, what he cooked up there tasted like shit. And they knew it, which is why they nuked the pairing after I think it was about 3 or 4 months. And they didn't just nuke it. They had JBL go on TV in a backstage segment with this guy after he lost another match and absolutely buried this man 6 feet under the ground, right to his face. Right down to telling him, "You can't polish a turd. I tried." There was no coming back from that. The only thing you could do to try to salvage this man at that point was send him back down to NXT. Put a fresh coat of paint on him, get him off of the main roster for as long as humanly possible, make people forget that any of that stuff ever happened. And he actually found some success down there as a fan favorite, no less. He and Braun Breaker, they got paired up as the Wolf Dogs and they won the NXT Tag Team titles, and the fans really took to them. But then he got drafted to SmackDown, and they tried to do the same with him and Apollo Crews, and that was the beginning of the end for him. It's like Dijak. Dijak, he said as soon as he found out that he was being drafted from NXT to Raw, he said, "Shit." Because he knew he was finished. And sure enough, it wasn't even 2 months later, he was gone. They decided not to renew his deal. It's like somebody asked me during the SmackDown stream on Friday night about Giovanni Vinci. Whatever happened to Vinci? That's a great question. I'm shocked that Vinci was not on the cut list. They ran weeks of vignettes for him just to bring him back the way they did. He got beat like a jabron in 3 seconds, and that was it. He was done after that. He made one more appearance and we haven't seen him since. We haven't even heard his name mentioned. He is done. He may pop back up on TV again for a one-off at some point if they need somebody to beat. But he may as well go and ask for his release right now because his career is dead in the water if he stays in that company. That's what happens when they don't have any plans for you. You don't need to be in the writer's room to know who they have plans for and who they don't, who they see as stars and who they don't. Just watch the shows. You don't need any inside information on that. Just watch the television shows. Corbin had one of the worst Money in the Bank cash-ins of all time, right up there with Austin Theory. He was constantly saddled with shitty gimmicks and shitty angles, and the one time they do something entertaining with him, they pivot away to a far less interesting gimmick. That is the story of Baron Corbin. Match-wise, the guy can wrestle. I mean, his matches were fine. He had some cool moves, but not cool enough to make him interesting in the absence of a good story, and they just never had one for him. So he's a guy who I think could do well on the indie scene if that's something he wants to pursue. I remember in NXT, he used to heel on indie guys to get heat. He told Apollo Crews once in a takeover match, it might have been in Brooklyn, he goes, go back to Ring of Honor. Even though Crews never worked for Ring of Honor. That's what made it so funny. And now he's in a position where he may be the indie guy. But people have left WWE and they have reinvented themselves and come back bigger than they were before. Drew McIntyre is the best example I could think of. He was doing goofy shit too in 3MB. And look at where he is now. You can't say that if somebody is doing a goofy, cartoony, silly gimmick that's it, they're done, that they can never be redeemed. Because Drew McIntyre is a great example of the fact that you can be redeemed. The big difference in that example is that McIntyre was 29 years old when he got cut from WWE. Corbin is 40. So the clock is ticking. But, just because he's 40 doesn't mean that his career is over. But he's going to have to go out and show people that WWE was sleeping on him and that they weren't right and that Corbin is mid and there just isn't anything there as far as major star power. Clearly, that's the way they felt. That's why they cut him. It's up to him to go out and put the work in and prove people wrong. If he can do that, then he's got a shot. And if not, if WWE was right and he was just a mid guy who didn't offer them any real value, then he'll be that ex-WWE guy who once smeared dog food on Roman Reigns. The choice is his. Indi Hartwell. She was a former NXT Women's Champion. She got called up. And as with many others, they didn't have any real ideas for what to do with her. She was Candice LeRae's sidekick. She peaked in NXT with the Dexter Loves Indi stuff and the wedding with Dexter Lumis. That was a fun storyline. But I was also thinking to myself, what were the memorable matches that Indi Hartwell had in her time in WWE, even going back to NXT? I can't think of a single one. I'm sure she must have been part of some really good, multi-person matches. But as far as like a big singles match, I can't think of a single one. And maybe that was part of the problem. But when they don't have anything for you, it's a hell of a lot easier for them to cut what they see as dead weight. Indi is another one who I don't think is going to hurt finding work somewhere else. And then Tegan Nox, who has not wrestled a match since July. She made it very clear on social media that it wasn't because she was out hurt. She said, some things are just out of your control, and you can only do as much as you can. Let's clear one thing up, though. I'm ready. I've been ready. Just have to show people what they've missed. Tegan Nox is a case of what if. What if she never got hurt? What if she would have won the Mae Young Classic like they wanted her to? What big plans might they have had for her? I know they re-signed her 2 years ago, and they were already well aware of her injury history, so you can't lay it all on the injuries, but you also cannot honestly sit there and tell me that her injury history did not play a role in their reluctance to do anything major with her. Her body betrayed her. It betrayed her at all the wrong moments. 3 ACL tears in the span of 4 years. And I believe she tore her ACL the first time playing soccer before she ever even set foot in a wrestling ring. I know it was a serious knee injury. I'm pretty sure it was her ACL. That's 4 ACL tears in her life. They called Steve Austin the bionic redneck because of all of his surgeries, the neck, the knees. She's like the bionic woman. One of the most heartbreaking things you'll ever see in a wrestling ring is her screaming and crying in agony in the ring with Rhea Ripley when she realized that she just tore her ACL again. And she was crying, and not only because of the pain, but she was crying that she can't go through this again. Because in her mind, she knew immediately, and she knew all the rehab, everything she had done previously, I can't go through this again. And the building, Full Sail was just stone cold silent. And you see people crying in the crowd. Your heart breaks for her. Her knee exploded. She tore so many things that night. And she fought hard to come back from that, but at no point did it ever feel like they were truly committed to doing anything with her. So if she's annoyed that people have called her injury-prone, damaged goods, and they think that she can't go anymore because of all the injuries, in 90 days, she has the chance to go out and make fools out of those people. She's already teasing the return of Nixon Newell. I'm rooting for her. What a shitty way for her career to end if this were to be it. I hope she can come back and stay healthy. That was always the question with her. Can she stay healthy? If she can make a quality addition to the women's division somewhere. There are other people on that roster that have very good reason to be worried that they might be next. And it sucks because it's not a case of them being lazy. I mean, these are people that want to work. They don't fly all over the country and come to work and just want to sit in the back and have a sandwich and watch everything on a monitor. They want to be featured on TV, but it's largely out of their hands. If they're advocating for themselves and they're lobbying for more ring time, more television time, like Cameron Grimes was doing that. Trevor Lee, when he was in WWE, every week at TV. And he just did an interview recently and talked about the power struggle between Vince McMahon and Triple H. Vince McMahon wasn't going to do anything with him. He had more hope that Triple H might, but he was coming to TV every single week, and he was probably pestering people, but I would too. He just wants to work. He just wants to go out there and just wrestle and show what he can do every single week. That's all you can do. All you can do is sit and wait for the inevitable to happen. Or you can go and be proactive and you can ask for your release and hope they give it to you so that you can go work somewhere else and drive up your value. Because your value is not going anywhere if you're just sitting in the back doing nothing.